What's up, guys? Marcellus Williams, aka TheSwolefessor, education on health and social well-being. I've got two special guests with me here. Guys, go ahead and introduce yourself. Joe, start off.
Hi guys, I'm Joe Stanek. I'm one of the coaches with the Strength Athlete. I work with powerlifters from all over the world and also a future gym owner.
Had to throw that in there, didn't you? All right, how's it going, guys? My name is Tim Thebodeau. You might have seen me around on YouTube because I've been creating content for a few years now. I've been coached by, as you guys know, Joey Flex for a few years now, and also going to be a future gym owner with this guy right here, and we'll have him visiting. So.
Yeah, they're going to be coming down to Austin, Texas, which we're looking forward to. You guys saw my last video, which this one should be uploaded. You know that we're here for the Lift for Charity event. And while we're here, I wanted to get these guys on the channel to discuss a topic that I think will be very relevant to most of you, because like or not, most of you fall in this category. And that's basically being an average or mediocre powerlifter. In the sense of maybe you're not somebody where your genetics are strong suited for powerlifting, maybe you're not built the best, maybe no matter if you maximize your muscle growth, you still won't be the biggest guy. Maybe you're taller, lanky, or whatever it may be. And you guys know I've talked to you about this on the channel briefly before about different things that I've done to kind of work around my leverages, which are like the squat, the deadlift, position-wise. And I kind of just want to have us talk about different things that we've done, both with technique and programming, to help us work around that, because a lot of people have this mindset of, oh, hey, if I'm not built for this, I can only get so far, then what's the point? But there's still so much to be gained from doing it, so much progress you can make. And I think it's safe to say that you can still be better than average, for sure. Like I'm definitely like, none of us are top 10 lifters like that, but I would definitely, humbly say that we're all still a little bit better than average. So just kind of want to get into that. So first of all, Tim, wanted to start with you, man, just in terms of kind of like, what would you say your biggest, build weakness is in terms of for the squat, the deadlift, the bench, kind of what are things you've just done anecdotally to kind of work around it?
Right. Well, I guess if we're going in order of quote unquote what's my weakest lift going to be, it's going to be the bench press, and what I'll say in a little bit is going to make a lot of sense to that. If I were to stand up and put my arms out, you guys would see that I've got a pretty long wingspan relative to my height, because I only stand about 5'9", 5'10", and my wingspan is roughly 6'1", 6'2". So clearly bench isn't going to be my best friend. Now, what I've done to optimize it over the years is, rather than going what feels best for me, which quite frankly is a medium grip bench, I don't know if anybody else can attest to that, I've actually just cranked it as much as I can to the widest legal comp grip that I could go. And on top of that, would you say that you have a lot of newer lifters that are watching your channel?
Yeah, it's a good mix for sure. It's definitely a lot of newer lifters.
I would say, if you find that you're struggling with bench the most, gain weight.
Yeah,
that's probably the number one thing that increased my bench, because the last time I competed 74, oddly enough, the most I ever benched was 292 pounds, but most recently in training, I benched 375 as an 83er. So that just goes to show that how much you weigh is going to correlate the most with how much you, in most cases, with how much you bench. Yeah. So I'd have to say, just find what's going to work the best for you. Reduce the range of motion, even though people think of it as cheating, but we're powerlifters, we know that's not the case.
Right.
Gain weight, and really try working on the little things like arching, your foot placement, how much leg drive are you going to be able to get, depending on where you place your feet. So that's really what I've done. With squat, I wouldn't say that's necessarily a weakness for me, because I do have long femurs relative to the length of my torso. However, because I'd like to say that how much I increased my deadlift over the years, that really built up my erector strength. So in a way, I compensate for my mechanical disadvantage with my back. But just because that worked for me, it doesn't mean it's going to work forever. And I was just talking about this with Marcellus yesterday. There was something that felt so comfortable for me for years of lifting, but it just got to this past year. It's not working for me anymore. I ended up hurting myself. I mean, you could attest to that a little bit more, right? Because you're really the one that kind of fixed me in a sense with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's like, once again, due to him having longer femurs, and I'm the same way, we kind of naturally almost want to just bias a little bit more extension, because it's just hard for us to be as upright in our squats, right? And then the whole purpose, we're trying to be more, not just upright, but you guys have seen people like Russell on my channel, Derek. Those are guys where they can really just stay upright, even though they're very different in height, right? Russell is shorter than me, Derek's much taller than me, but they're both structurally, their legs relative to their torso, they're built better to squat. So for guys like us, and you guys go look at my old videos, it's really easy for us to kind of almost want to sit back more in our squat. It feels almost more natural and comfortable for us. But what Tim started running into, and I ran into the same thing a while back, was it just really starts to beat you up, like the back, the hips, like there's not a very good equal distribution of tension like throughout the body. So instead, what we worked on with Tim, which you guys already see, I'll even have that video link down below of how to set up in the squat, is how to get yourself in a more stacked position, focus on kind of driving your knees forward, keeping the quads more engaged. That way your back, your hips aren't taking more of the load than what they should. They're still doing the work they're supposed to, but it's not anything like overly aggressive. And that's the thing, it's not to say that what Tim or what I was doing up till we made that change was bad, but it's understanding that if you're not exactly like structurally built for this, what might be working for a while won't always work as those loads get heavier. Whereas if you're built more for a lift, I mean, all of you have seen before those guys where it's like, man, that guy's super strong, he's built work for a lift, but his form's just really, really crappy. They can get away with that. It doesn't mean that they wouldn't be stronger if they correct their form, but unlike them, we almost don't have a choice. Like if we don't start to refine those things, we're gonna keep getting hurt, we're gonna get more beat up, and we're gonna kind of like stall and stagnate. And what I thought was interesting what you said about your bench was like, for me, I've tried like various grips, closer, max grip. And the only reason that I can't really keep going with the max grip is more so because of how it affects my shoulders.
Right.
But even with my closer grip, just because it's more stable and consistent for me, the big things like you said, gaining weight, like building muscle mass. And like when we say that, we don't mean like, you know, just eating your way up to a weight class, but spending time to get your chest bigger, get your back bigger. All those muscles that are involved are going to make a pretty big difference. And then, Joe, what would you say for you as far as the lifts?
Geez, so I don't know if either of you know this, but I've been powerlifting for a long time, since I was 13.
Yeah.
So it's been a really, really slow grind for me. Whereas these two, like, you know, they've really kind of started to come up recently. Since I've been doing it for longer, I feel like it's given me a little bit more insight into just the things that work and the things that don't.
Yeah.
I've kind of realized over the course of my career that I'm just really not built to powerlift at all.
Yeah.
My levers are the exact opposite of what you need for every single lift.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing for me has kind of been just adjusting my form in a way that I can either limit range of motion in a certain way, or I can maximize the things that I was given genetically. I have gigantic legs.
Yeah.
Like just, I've always had them. I was a cross-country runner in high school, and I still had gigantic quads. So even though like I naturally want to fold a little bit more in the squat because my legs are very long, I try to bias exactly what you were just talking about with pushing my knees a little bit more forward because I just have more strength there.
Yeah.
I do have to be careful about that though, because I did end up giving myself really bad knee problems kind of chronically. So it's all about kind of like balancing volume out. For the bench press, I have long arms, but they're not like ultra long. So I can kind of get away with a little bit less of an arch. For years I was trying to just maximize, which I think that helped. That gave me some confidence on the bench press because it was, you know, it was still a difficult lift for me to adapt to. But I realized that the bar path just wasn't as stable for me.
Yeah.
So as soon as I sort of let off the gas and kind of focused a little bit more on maybe the drive through my legs rather than the maximum amount of arch, that's kind of when my bench started to go. And then for the deadlift, the thing for me that's been the biggest thing that's allowed me to pull more, and this, I literally just figured this out a few months ago. I've been like stuck on my deadlift for 2 years, and then I just started adding weight to it. Was adding a little bit more length per se by sort of reaching more with my arms. Because like I said, while I have long arms, they're relative to my body, they're not that long. So as a result, just kind of almost rounding my upper back a little bit, not excessively, just a tiny little bit, giving myself that extra little bit. It feels like cheat codes, honestly.
I'm just so bit of protraction.
Because I was so used to just like, you know, just my normal leverages. So that just feels so much shorter, so much tighter. So putting all those things together is kind of what's allowed me to advance over time. And then the other big thing too is manipulating programming kind of outside of the box.
Absolutely, and that's huge. Like, so to catch up with them, you guys already pretty much know. For me with my squat, it was getting myself in a more stacked position that allowed me to be a little bit more like upright. Like there's still extension in the low bar squat, but I'm not so extended where I feel like I'm doing good morning coming out of it. For my bench press with the longer arms relative to my frame, it was really just getting jacked, like speaking honestly, like a lot of accessories, getting bigger, eating more, letting myself weigh more.
Still working on that one.
and then you guys look for my deadlift. Very similar things to what Joe is saying as far as like, okay, like learning to like, because you guys know my setup isn't me praying or anything fancy, but I'm doing it for a reason in terms of like, okay, getting myself stacked, pushing my arms out long. Because my biggest thing with the deadlift, funny enough, even though I have longer arms, isn't just the length of my legs, it's how my hips insert. Because of how my hips insert, I naturally will bias flexion. So me taking my time to really kind of get this more neutralized, and the reason why you guys see me hinge so slowly is I know even though it takes a bit more time to get to the bar, I can maintain that neutrality a little bit better, puts me in a stronger position on the floor. So that's what I do as far as technique. But going off what Joe was saying as far as programming, I found that that's been one of the biggest things, because it's like, for me, for example, I know that like I squat 3 times a week. But I found that if I do low bar squat 3 times a week, or even 2 low bar and 1 high bar day, I'd be so careful with those rep ranges because it just beats my back up. With SSBs, that's one of the reasons why I like them so much, and you guys see me do them on my secondary days, because I can push the rep ranges higher and get more volume without my back feeling as bad. But with low bar and high bar, when I do anything more than like 6 reps, it doesn't matter what the weight is. My position just does not feel very well maintained. So volume dosage and like, you know, making up for that with like belt squats, leg press, that's been something that's helped me a lot. But what are things, Joe, you found that work, you know, for you or even some of your athletes who aren't built as well?
It's funny you mention your back getting beat up, because I'm kind of the opposite.
Yeah.
If I don't do low bar or some kind of low bar variation often, I get the opposite effect. My knees start to really take it.
Yeah.
Because I just, I really bias that movement towards it so much because it's just what I have.
Yeah.
I will start to get beat up if I try to do things like, like high bar or SSB that kind of bias that a little bit more, put more weight into the quads.
Yeah.
Plus, like I had such a history of knee issues that tissue in that area just is kind of naturally sensitive.
Yeah.
Like obviously I'm not still injured, but it just, it feels a little bit finicky.
Might flare up from time to time.
Yeah. So the way that I actually got over that is really interesting. I actually squatted very high frequency 4 times a week, but which I would not recommend to most, but it was very little volume. Like maybe 2 sets at most.
So you got your weekly workload in throughout the week, but you spread out throughout more days. So you're not doing so much on one day to beat yourself up.
Yeah, because I found the biggest factor was the per session volume. Was that.
Yeah.
Nowadays I squat 3 times a week because thankfully I'm over it.
Yeah.
But I still kind of keep my volume honestly a lot lower than most lifters. And I also try to stay away from higher rep ranges on the squat in particular, because my form starts to go, and then that's when I start to feel it in my knees.
Yeah.
So I'll leave that kind of work, just like you said before, to like leg presses, belt squats, that sort of deal. And honestly, I think there's a lot of lifters out there, like you mentioned, lifters that I've worked with that aren't necessarily as gifted. Even the lifters that are gifted, I feel like if you can get them having more productive sessions when it comes to the actual competition lifts.
Yep.
I think that it creates a lot more momentum. They just don't feel as beat up constantly.
Absolutely.
And not that like you should never feel beat up, but if you're too beat up year round, it's just you're holding yourself back. The progress just isn't going to come.
And like I told you guys before, even if you're like, let's say you're number 1 in your weight class, you could be better just through genetics alone, better than 90% of other lifters. But if you're trying to maximize everything you can do, be the best you can be, then this stuff we're saying applies to no matter what, whether you build well for it or not. And then, Tim, I want to ask you, especially in terms of like, because even with the bench press, all the lifts really, outside of your technical changes, what are some things you found that have helped you a lot, whether it be movement prep, accessories, programming, what are things that have just helped you like feel like you're staying healthier and can get more out of those movements?
If you want me to be honest, and people probably aren't going to like this answer, it's just reducing the amount of stress in my life.
That's huge.
As long as I've been competing, which is, I've done 7 meets over the course of like 4 or 5 years now, 90% of the meets that I've competed in, I went into completely stressed out, and I've had subpar performances. And the one meet that I had in the beginning of 2019, where it was my absolute best performance, I just went in there as clear-minded as I could be. Granted, I still have the regular stressors of like work, a relationship at the time, family. Am I keeping up to date with my macros? Am I being in check with my injuries?
Sure.
But like the more I can reduce my overall cortisol levels, the better lifter I'm going to be. And I really want to drill this with especially the younger lifters that might be watching your channel that have nothing to focus on right now except, which isn't a bad thing, but they have nothing to focus on right now except for maybe school and powerlifting. And again, it's not to discourage you or anything, but there's the potential of you being in for a rude awakening.
It's going to shift.
Once you hit real life, so to say. And I guess another thing I want to touch on, which you guys were talking about programming before, I personally feel like your recoverable amount of volume that you can do on a weekly basis will change if you fluctuate between weight classes.
Absolutely.
Because my training as a 74 was nothing like my training as an 83, and even then, when I first initially bumped up weight classes, I took a huge shift with my training, but because I got so strong so quickly, my body wasn't used to all that, and Joey and I had to make adjustments probably every single block.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys you probably have run into that with your lifters too.
Oh, absolutely. And I want to touch on two things. One, the stress thing. I tell you guys all the time, outside of your eating and the programming, in my opinion, you probably agree with this. The two biggest things that affect your recovery is sleep and stress.
Yeah.
And those two often go hand in hand. If your sleep's crappy, your stress is high. If your stress high, your sleep's usually crappy. So that's a game changer no matter who you are. And then as far as the weight class, you guys have seen just the amount of volume of work that I can do now. And I haven't even filled the 83 kg class out yet. Just from being a few pounds heavier is ridiculous. So that's helped a lot. And like you said, making those adjustments is needed. Because one thing that I had to be aware of was whoa, I'm doing way more load than I'm used to. I'm able to do it, but that doesn't mean that my recovery is caught up quite as quickly. So I have to kind of be careful how to scale. Eventually it will. The work capacity will be higher, the recovery will be higher, but you got to do it almost in a gradual type of way.
Yeah, I think something in that same vein too. I've recently started to take my nutrition a little bit more seriously, which it's kind of funny. They're doing a nutrition panel up in the gym right now for the charity event, and they were talking about how it seems like people they'll be so meticulous about their training, but then they're super lax about their nutrition. And it's just when you are not built to do this sport, you need to take every possible advantage that you can get, and that's one of the huge things. And honestly, just making sure you're getting in enough protein and calories, you're ahead of the game. It's amazing how you might have run into this when you're coaching at nationals, and I don't know if you've talked to people at nationals, but there are some lifters that still are not getting adequate amounts of protein. They just don't.
They don't even know how much protein they're taking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's just like they don't know, and that's extremely suboptimal. It amazes me how I can get to working with an athlete that has subpar nutrition, and we make a couple of changes, and they're suddenly just recovering from training that much better. And the cool thing about that, I know you guys mentioned weight class. For myself, I'm not necessarily going up or down a weight class right now. I'm kind of just chilling right by the top of 93s. But because I've started taking my nutrition so much more seriously, my body composition is better. I'm sleeping better, and honestly, I'm less stressed because I just feel better overall. So if you guys aren't doing that, it doesn't necessarily have to be you're tracking every gram on a food scale, but just keeping a better eye on that, letting a vegetable pass your lips every now and then.
That micronutrition is huge, but something as simple as 2 servings of fruit a day, it can go such a long way. And like you're saying with the recompositioning, it's funny because you guys probably both heard this. Hey, if you want to be the best of your weight class, you want to be the shortest, leanest, most jacked guy, right? Obviously, you can't control your height, you can't control your leverages, and the jackness to a certain degree, right? You try to maximize what muscle you may have, but your muscle to fat ratio is something that you can control through your nutrition, through your body composition. And I think that's huge. And I think the main thing we all kind of agree on is that the more variables in your control, the better off you're going to be. And granted, we get it. Not everyone's doing this because they want to be some of you are just doing this for fun. That's totally okay. I guess my thing though is for those of you where you're putting money into this, you're buying these sleeves, you're paying a coach, you're buying plane tickets to go to meets. We're trying to give you these tools to help you kind of, to the best of your ability, maximize everything you can do. And one thing, going back to the technique thing, is don't be afraid to play with things that may seem out of the realm of what's normal, like textbook form, right? Because even little things when you're deadlift, you keep the bar right over midfoot, you might be a little bit behind that, a little bit in front of that, depending on how you set up. I always think it's funny how most coaches will acknowledge that, someone's squat stance might be different, close, toes in, toes out, whatever. But when it comes to or bench grip or how you set up, how much arch you have, but for some reason I find that a lot of people when it comes to deadlifting, they seem to be almost more you have to do it this specific way. That's something that I found more for whatever reason. I don't understand why that is.
I was kind of talking to you about this. I was kind of talking to you about this yesterday. Angelo Fortino.
Yeah.
He's notorious for scraping his shins with the bar.
Yeah.
I found that if I even attempt to do that, my entire deadlift gets thrown out of position. I have to pull with a little bit in front of me.
Yes.
And I don't know if that's due to like where my shoulders are relative to everything else, but it just doesn't work for me. I need to be a little bit in front.
Yeah.
So
I was deadlifting yesterday after a donut challenge, which you should never do if you are asked to. I was deadlifting yesterday, and I wanted to try something a little bit different with the way that I was pulling, just to see if maybe I could get the slack out of the bar a little bit better. And so normally I would bias it so I'm just a little bit further back from the bar than like right over midfoot, because of the length of my legs. It makes it easier for me to kind of get my weight behind.
And almost get your hips closer to the bar.
Yeah, behind the center of gravity.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, maybe if I get a little bit closer and I try to leverage up with the bar a little bit more, maybe it will work. The video of it's just like, I was almost embarrassed because I've got all these strong people around me, right? I'm just like super forward. Like so much of me is up in front of the barbell.
Yeah.
And it's just like, there's going to be moments like that too, by the way. It's not going to be all sunshine and rainbows when it comes to adjusting things like that. If you're trying things that are out of the box, that are in the box when it comes to technique, it's going to be, especially if you're not built well for it, it's going to be experimental,
trial and error.
And some things will work and some things might not, but it's still worth it to follow those things. But just like they said, to cap off that point, you might not necessarily be built in the way that is, or in a way that you can.
All right, sorry guys, we got cut off real quick. My camera can only record 20 minutes at a time. It does not feel like it's been that long.
Right.
But Joe, finish off what you were saying as far as like you may not be built to go through, like you may not be built typically to go through, I guess, the usual technique, things like barbell midfoot, etc.
Yeah, so you essentially, if you're not built to powerlift, you just need to be comfortable, and honestly, even if you are, you need to be comfortable with experimenting enough where it's not necessarily going to look what is considered textbook. Like you just said, the bar might not necessarily be over the midfoot in the deadlift. Or the squat. You may like take a weird grip on bench press, but if it works for you, if it helps you maximize your leverage, then as long as it's meeting competition standards, then cool. You're doing what you need to do.
Admittedly, I don't even pull the slack out of the bar when I sumo.
Oh really?
I don't.
Oh, I never noticed that.
I did never notice that.
Like that's why I open my hands up a little bit, and then as soon as I'm wedging myself, then I start to close a little bit.
Interesting.
I pull my hips past their ideal point, and then they snap into position when I go for the pull.
Okay. See, that's something that I never even would have.
That's something that I had to work, I want to say, 4 years on.
Yeah.
But again, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to work for you. I think the biggest thing right now is you have to consider that some of the best powerlifters in the sport, they're not even built optimally.
Absolutely, yeah, that's true. I mean, Sean Noriega is here with us, and really, ideally, from a leverage perspective, the dude's he's built nowhere near as good as Russell for powerlifting, like not even close, and yet he's managed to, stay on his tail as number 2.
Yeah, and the second point, if you're having a little bit of difficulty of what works for you, try finding lifters that have a pretty similar build, and I'm not saying copy their technique, like cue for cue, but just take some of their things and try to create something of your own. And even at that point, what you can do is honestly hire a coach that knows significantly more, that's been in the sport longer, and they'll be able to nitpick and find what works for you the best.
Absolutely. I mean, I've so much of what I've done, guys, have changed from my deadlift that I mentioned in my previous videos. It's literally from watching Tim, just because, like, not that I knew what he was cueing necessarily, but I'm like, okay, this guy's kind of built similar to me. We're about the same height, similar leverages. This looks like it's working well for his conventional. Let me try it. That's actually why I started, like, not as close to the bar on my conventionals. I saw you doing that. I'm like, oh wow, this feels way better. I can keep myself a little bit more neutral position. And then one thing we were saying before the camera, or after the camera cut off rather, was like, your form doesn't have to be the prettiest thing. It just has to be efficient. And then Timmy, you were talking about how like you would like you have your toes forward all this time because you thought it looked better. Or whatever.
Exactly, and it ended up hurting me. So
yeah. It's not. This isn't a beauty pageant. It's literally about moving things from point A to point B. And that's the point that I wanted to hit on too, guys, was that tension and position is so important, and I built well for this. I think people get so focused on trying to make their lift so fast as possible. But I tell you guys all the time, listen, it doesn't matter how fast I get into the squat. If I'm so folded over from how fast I'm going down, I'm not getting it back up. It doesn't matter how fast I get to the bar on the deadlift or how fast I try to wedge off the ground. If I'm so flexed over where I can't lock it out, it doesn't matter if I get the bar to my chest super fast. If I sink myself out of position and can't get it up. So I think that's something that's been, I mean, that's once again true for everybody, but once again, Russell can probably get away with not having quite as much tension or having the perfect ideal position than what I can. So
to that point, I think something that a lot of people, I mean, it sounds like you've hit on in other videos. The big thing when you don't have great leverages, the thing that helps you overcome them is muscle mass.
Yes.
And that sort of ties into the whole like weight class thing as well. Again, like I feel like a lot of lifters made this mistake. I definitely did. I mean, I know you guys have similar stories about trying to stay in weight classes, but especially like when I was younger, I was just glued to just staying at a certain weight. And I mean, sure, there's probably some social factors in there. You know, when amongst your friends, your non-powerlifter friends, you know, you're the guy that lifts, right? You know, you gotta look good. And that really held me back. Honestly, like if you, I don't want to call anyone out in particular, but if you look at Charlie Dixon, that guy is not built well on, mechanically speaking, on any of the lifts, like at all. But the guy is, I think, what did he come in second in 93s at Nationals this past year?
Second or third.
So, and he's won junior 83s before. The guy is just absolutely jacked out of his mind.
He looks like he's ready to get on a stage. And
honestly.
And I'll have like different videos about their lifts that they bring up examples of, and I'll have a video of Charlie up on the screen, things like that. But the dude is ridiculously jacked. Looks like he's about to go bodybuild.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just, so the point that I bring up there is, and this is a big one, do not skip your accessory work. Do your accessory work. Put effort into it. Because I know how it is where you get done with like your hour and a half of 1 to 2 power lifts, and you're tired, and you're like, I can skip my accessories for the day. If you get in that habit, you're gonna miss out on some gains for sure, and those contribute so much to your overall ability to move load in the actual power lifts. Not to mention that you can probably do more volume with those over time and not be as beat up. So
stay healthy.
So put effort into your accessories and make sure you stay in a relative caloric surplus for most of your career, and that's what's going to make you the strongest you can possibly be.
Absolutely. And if you guys are on this channel, you know about the craftsmanship around here. You guys know how I feel about accessories. And I'm not saying like you want some structure with it, right? Don't just go do whatever random stuff and burn yourself out to where you're hurting the big three. But you guys have seen plenty of videos on this channel about how to periodize your accessories, how to rate them by RP, things like that. But yeah, I mean, I think honestly it's a topic that we'll probably talk about like for hours and hours all day. But really just wanted to have you guys on here. Joe, you as also like, you know, a well-known coach who's worked with various athletes, also not built for yourself. And then Tim, just the fact of what I've learned just from watching you and watching your lifts and knowing the experience you've gone through. And then even like, if you guys are not, like, follow both of them on Instagram, definitely check out Tim's channel. Joe, you don't have a YouTube channel.
I do actually. I just started one.
Okay, I'll have both their channels in the description down below. But yeah, Tim is a YouTube OG. He's been like 7 years?
7 years, yeah.
7 years.
Yeah, it's been that long, man.
Lots of awesome videos over topics that I feel like kind of almost relate more to some like my social well-being topics in this video that play such a big role not only in powerlifting and life that will help you guys so much. But yeah, no, I appreciate, you know, having both of you on. Appreciate y'all taking your time, because I know we're all tired. This is like day 4, and we've been going back to bed. This dude's taking like almost 20 ammonia bombs. It's ridiculous.
It's so bad.
Joe, I think, had to take like did they give you like a bunch of caffeine yesterday?
They gave me 3 2-scoop hits of caffeine.
It is almost at like midnight, so
I was up to like 4 last night.
I know we probably didn't get much sleep, but yeah, that's pretty much it for the video though, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, go and leave a comment down below, let me know what you did. If you're not, leave a comment down below, let me know what I or these guys can do to get better. Like the video, share, subscribe, keep it simple, specific, scientific. I'll catch you guys later.